decided if we're going to make a two-part series, this is where we're going to start the second part. I hope you enjoyed the first part, and if you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave them with comments. Of course, you know where to leave comments. And if you have any questions on what we're talking about, you can either email me at Legendsunearthedllc at gmail.com or Tiscaro at gmail.com, and that's Dan's email. Anyway, have fun with the second part. Alright, we're on again. So I think we probably should back up just a little bit so we can. I think we had an interruption when you were talking about.
And this lady, she had some pretty incredible stories to tell. And I really couldn't find.
You said that she was saying stuff that you hadn't even read about yet.
Yeah.
And what were some of those things?
Well, rather than go to that, let me finish. You know, she told me some pretty incredible things, and some of them were things that I hadn't even read about yet. And when I was talking to her, I asked her, you know, simple details. If I brought you some photos and showed you pictures of this guy from that approximate time frame, would you be able to identify him? She goes, oh yeah. And I did, and she correctly identified certain photos. The one of William A. Clark, she said, you know, she says it looks like him, but I don't think that one's him. And at the time, I thought William A. Clark's photos that you see online, I thought those were him. They're not, they're Carl Clark, and he was a paid double. But I says, can you remember anything else about him? She says, well, he had a pot belly. You know, he was kind of thin and so forth, but he had a pot belly. And yeah, that's J. Frank Dalton at that time frame. He had a pot belly. And there's more than just him that has pot bellies.
I don't know what you're talking about.
But we're not going to talk about that, are we? I asked her, do you remember anything as far as wounds go, you know, like scars, things like that? And she says, yeah, he had a finger that the end of his finger had been chewed off. I says, can you remember which finger? And she says, oh yeah, he used to poke me in the belly with it. She said on his left index finger, the end of his finger had been chewed off. And she says in the other half of the nail or whatever, it was black. And he would tell jokes and then poke me in the belly with it, and you know. And I think it was not long after that I went. We've been up there 2 or 3 times to talk to her. Mm-hmm. She was fun to talk to, and on one of them I took that video, and plus I took the pictures up that I told her about, and I showed her that video on YouTube, and she says he's much older there, but that's him. And I froze the frame right when he's reaching up for the bucket, and you can see his black fingertip. I says, is that the finger you're talking about? She says, yep.
So, you did kind of have, you had an eyewitness, albeit an older lady, but she still had her faculties.
Look at all the coincidence, not just her story, but, the Harrison Trow thing and John Trammell, etc., etc. There's too much here. How does a book author get that lucky?
You can't.
It doesn't happen. I mean, he would have had to have been one of the most, would you put it?
Clairvoyant.
With the best foresight, clairvoyant. The best foresight of any book author there was, and created this whole thing in his head.
That's what people say about the Book of Mormon.
Well, there's little things, there's little things that I'd like to prove, but I can't. I just haven't found the proof yet. I didn't disprove it, but I can't. Like one, there's a name mentioned of a name of, I can't remember whether it's his grandmother, his aunt, or whatever. It's supposed to be in Oak something cemetery back east, and I actually had to go up and look for that headstone, and it's just not there. And it's not recorded on their roster. Maybe we're in the wrong cemetery, I don't know. But things like that I have not yet proven. I haven't disproved them.
But everything you're finding out so far is nothing against the book.
So far, no. So anyway, what you said, we were going to go into something else after that.
Well, first of all, you got to ask the big question now is why? Okay, we already talked about that there's so many things happening in his name. He just had to clear his name and get rid of himself.
Right.
Okay, but there's other reasons why he was doing a lot of these things, and without going in too much depth right now, but he is rumored that he's part of the KGC.
Right. The organization. And just to clarify a little bit on that, you have the Confederate Underground, okay? Well, first you have the Confederates who were fighting against the North, the Union.
Right.
Then you have the Confederate organization, then you have the Confederate Underground. The Confederate Underground had organizations. One of them was the KGC. There were others.
Okay.
They each had specific duties and so forth. And KGC was to weaken the enemy in a financial sense as often as possible.
Okay, and so we don't know what he was in charge of, but he was at least a member of the KGC, the Confederate Underground.
According to the Black Book, he was the comptroller. That means he may be reporting to as little as 2 people.
And so for him to take on these aliases, he's probably doing some things that...
Yeah, a specific calling that he had to do here, a specific calling here. These two cannot interfere with each other, so you have different names.
So that's another reason why he had all these different names.
Right. And the 2 people that he would report to was, one was William Quantrill. His actual name was Albert DeWitt Travis. Okay?
That's who
Told you I'd remember it.
That's who he reported to.
Right. The other one would be Albert Pike.
And so if anything happened, they would give him a notification to be somewhere or do something, and he would have to do it. Otherwise, he was a subject. He could have got killed from his organization.
Yeah.
So to speak.
Well, for example, the story about, and this isn't in the Black Book, but there's the story of Susan Palmer. And Susan Palmer, she lived up in, I think it was Malad, Idaho. And her family were convinced that the man that she married under the name of William Cole, they were positive that it was Jesse James. And the dates are very profound. They know exactly when it happened, so forth, so on. Well, one day he just up and disappeared. He said something about going to California to find their family's fortune. And he disappeared and never came back. And for various reasons, they thought for certain that he was Jesse James. Okay? But, which Jesse James? Well, turns out she was pregnant. And based on the dates and everything, there's no way he knew she was pregnant.
When he left.
And had he known,
he probably
I guarantee he would have taken care of her.
Or at least brought her with him.
Right. Well, I always wondered where it was he went, till I was reading through the Black Book, and I read this story about the 66 tons of gold, which was a gold heist. I don't know how many wagons were involved, but they were big freight wagons.
And those freight wagons are huge.
These were big, and they were pulled by oxen. And they were to leave Leadville, Colorado, on their way on the way to Denver. It was placer gold, flour gold, that kind of thing. And they obviously waited too long to ship it. I mean, 66 tons. But they decided not to go to the south and around the mountain.
So it wasn't refined yet? It wasn't refined yet, it was just...
No, it was just the
raw material?
Yeah. Okay. Like if you were panning gold, what's left, that's what it was. And they decided not to go to the south and skirt the mountains and then head up to Denver, and they decided not to go up and over the pass that's way up to the north. And they decided to go up and over Mosquito Pass. Out of Leadville, up and over the top and down into, can't remember the name of the town. And they figured that was going to be the safest route. And apparently after they went up and through the pass, they got raided. And all they know is that all the wagons and all the oxen just disappeared. They have no idea what happened to it. And according to the Black Book, it's been hidden underneath a big rock somewhere up there around 13,000 feet elevation. I have my ideas of what happened to it, how it got out of there, etc., but we'll hold on to that.
But you're assuming that Jesse James orchestrated that.
Right, back to why I was telling you that. Jesse, in the Black Book, it tells you that he was up in Malad, Idaho, okay? Same dates, same months, everything. And he received notification, a dispatch, that he had to be in Leadville, Colorado as soon as possible because there was a job that he had to do. And when he got there, he found out that he had to heist this wagon train that was going up and over the mountain. Well, that's where he went.
Instead of California.
Exactly. He was called out on a job. He had to go out and take care of this job.
Like a 007 type thing,
Yeah, and why he didn't go back.
Mission Impossible. If you accept this.
Yeah, and
Did you accept this? This message was self-destruct.
Self-destruct, yeah. But for whatever reasons, he didn't go back. It could be because he thought, well, we didn't have any kids. Now would probably be the best time to depart and, make it easier on her.
Okay, stop right there.
But he never went back.
Why would he go there in the first place?
In the process of setting something up. Who knows?
Okay. It's kind of funny that he says, well, I want to go here.
Jesse didn't just go around and say, hey, you know what? She's pretty cute. I think I'll marry her.
It could have been because she came from a very prominent family.
Oh, yeah. She was a lady in waiting.
So that means...
To the queen. What was she a lady in waiting for?
That would help out, because that could have been the whole situation right there, him setting himself up for something happening there.
Yes, and apparently it came to the point where they no longer needed it, and so he just disappeared from the scene. He wasn't without feelings, okay?
Well, that kind of seemed like it.
It does, true. But you do what you have to do. And the way I look at it, Myra Bell knew damn well he had to do these things. It's what he did. And it was for the good of the country. The country just didn't know it.
Okay.
And by the way, the Confederates failed. And now we have a world banking system.
Okay, the KGC just didn't have one site that they buried all the gold that came. Okay, we have the story of John Adams back in the Civil War, right?
You mean Jefferson?
That one
Jefferson
too.
Davis.
Jefferson.
I don't know how the hell I remembered that, but
he's the one that got caught dressing up like
supposedly dressed up like a lady. No, it was a woman's cloak thrown over him because his men were trying to get him out of there without being captured. I mean, yeah, I could just see him running away in high heels and everything.
Well, he tried to pass for a woman.
He was trying to get out of there.
Which I got.
I did it again, didn't I?
I'm just trying to get the viewers into that perspective. What we're talking about now is they were moving gold, or that was going to fund the Confederacy.
Right.
Okay, and but it didn't work out that time.
Well, the academics think that that's all the gold the Confederates had.
Right.
And it was a lie.
There's not just one KGC. Yeah. Site. There's multiple, and the reason, and that's the sole reason why, is because if they found one, then they got it all. But it was, and as they took money from the world banking system, as they robbed their trains
through train robberies, bank robberies, utilities, whatever they were invested in.
So my question was, which I just answered my own questions.
No, you hate it when you do that.
It's just not one. KGCs had cash sites. Why did they do that? Why? I mean, it seems like whenever you hide something in the earth nowadays, you never get it back because something happens to it.
Well, it's because of the curse that was put on this land long, long ago. You hide something up in the earth that isn't hidden up for his purposes,
it becomes slippery.
I
remember reading that.
I'm pretty sure it was hid up for his purposes, so someday it's going to come out.
Maybe.
Anyway, but
okay, so
the point being is there isn't just one big depository somewhere. And the people in the North, or should we say world bankers, they know this. They know exactly how much has been taken from them. And it's an atrocious number.
Okay, so we're to the point where we have multiple cash sites. It would make sense that they would be able to mark these cash sites because apparently, okay, tell me if I'm wrong, but they were going to hide it for 50 years, which meant in 1966, the year I was born.
No, it was the history they were going to hide for X amount of years.
I thought they were going to expose where everything was after that because
not as far as I know. It was just what really happened.
That's in the black book, so I got to read that again.
Right, and maybe I need to read it again, but no, I don't think they were going to show, because what's going to happen? World bankers, the people it was stolen from, okay, who stole it from us.
Okay, so we're not sure exactly what's going to happen, but it never happened in 1966.
No.
They kept it hushed, whatever it was. It remained the same situation after 1966.
Right, it's still out there.
Okay, so being that it's still out there, the question, did they mark how to get to these sites again? Or did they just keep it by the person, by word of mouth, or?
Yes.
Both. Yes?
Yes.
Some of these cache sites I heard look like petroglyphs. The markings to these sites can be mistaken for petroglyphs.
And Jesse said, when he was asked, and I would advise you read the black book so that you get exactly what the book says that he said, because I wasn't there.
Oh, come on.
He was asked about the signs and symbols, and does he still remember them? And he said, oh, most certainly. He says they're often mistaken for Native American, or how he put it, I'm not sure. They're often mistaken for Indian writings. Okay? And I have my opinion of what those are. So.
It is known, at least I've heard, that he had his own symbols that he marked for his name. It was a J and a backwards J.
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
And so if you see one of those symbols, you would know probably that his cache is like either on your way to one of his cache sites or it's
Right
nearby.
now, there should be a picture appearing on your screen that shows a J and a backwards J. Okay, continue.
How did they, I guess, did they just use a little chisel or to make these signs or symbols and stuff? Or?
Well, yeah, that's what I do.
I
just scratched it in, but not just scratches on the surface, but an actual channel from the tool.
Do you think these sites are still watched today?
Some of them.
Maybe we can talk, is there a couple more examples of things that Jesse did? Like one was the 66 tons of gold.
Well, two of his primary aliases. One was William A. Clark. And I'm sure there's a few people out there that would disagree, but William A. Clark, if you go look him up online, you'll see a picture of a certain guy, and you look at it, and even when I saw it, I thought, that's not Jesse. At first, I didn't know one way or the other. I thought, could it be? It's when I was still trying to find that one photo that we knew was Jesse. The photo that most commonly shows up when you look up William A. Clark is actually Carl O. Clark.
And you said he was a stand-in or
he was a paid double. Pretty intelligent man because he handled all the affairs. In fact, it was probably one of the least personally involved individuals that Jesse had as an alias. Because Carl O. Clark was good enough, he could take care of pretty much anything Jesse wanted him to. But in the Black Book, it tells who he actually was, Carl O. Clark, and that he passed away in Death Valley in a certain year and whatever. So, of course, that's something I can look up and verify, and I found him. I mean, Carl O. Clark isn't exactly a common name, and I have to admit, it wasn't precisely in Death Valley. It was like in the next suburb over. It was just outside of what I would think is Death Valley, but to the people that live there, that could be part of Death Valley. But yeah, he actually existed. My goal now is to actually find a picture of Carl O. Clark, and I'm hoping that one of his relatives sooner or later adds a photo in his file in the genealogical sites, and if they ever do, I'll bet you it looks just like him. Yeah, the other name that he operated under more so than others was Captain Harrison Trow. He kept that one alive until 1925, and strangely enough, a week later he killed off William A. Clark also.
A week after Trow died?
Right after he killed off Captain Harrison Trow, he killed off William A. Clark.
That's just
I think he had reached a point where he was
pretty much
ready to retire.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of different names that have popped up, and as you're doing the research, you know that the name you're looking at is probably Jesse, but you don't have any way to prove it. Going through utilities companies, railroad companies, etc.
Okay, so it's been said, how did he make his money? And we thought maybe it was from these KGC sites, but he was also involved in a lot of other things like...
Yeah. He most certainly took advantage of what he was doing, and I don't know how he would justify, okay, this is KGC, this one's not, okay? I don't know how that worked. Nobody's going to figure out how that worked because we weren't there, we weren't in his head.
Right, but he'd be like on the board of directors of mining companies or utility companies?
He was in control positions. I'll give you one example, okay? I think it's called the Lordsburg train robbery.
Okay.
All prearranged. Jesse took some of his own gold. I don't know how much of it. Can't remember. You can go read the story. And he knew that it was being shipped from point A to San Francisco, and it was going to pass through, what did I just say?
Lordsville, something like that?
Lordsdale? Shit, I don't know. I mean, see, I just did it again. He knew exactly how much he was sending. Why he was sending it was simply so it could be intercepted. And the shipment was insured. Jesse had already talked to the, what do you call him, the engineer, the guy that works,
the train,
one that runs the train, etc., and the
engineer.
employees. He had already paid him, already told him exactly what he wanted to do, and as the train's going through that part of New Mexico, the train stops exactly where he wanted it to. The door opens up, and this guy says, "Where do you want it, sir?" He says, "Just push it on out." And so the guy pushed it out. He says, "Thank you very much." And the guy closes the door, and off the train goes. And it didn't get reported until he got to San Francisco. So Jesse robbed his own shipment, and then the insurance paid it off.
That's insurance fraud.
That's privateering.
Okay.
So, to what extent he did things like that, I don't know. I mean, if he needed money to start a business, I am pretty sure he knew where to get it. There were several things that he did. I mean, they were into building railroad grades for the railroad companies. This is considered one of their enemies, okay? But he's building railroad grades for the railroad companies, which are owned and backed by world bankers.
So what other things was he like on the board of directors for, type thing?
Utilities companies, streetcars. He liked utilities, railroads. If I'm not mistaken, I think he at one time owned, let's see, there's two, there's Union Pacific and then there's Rio Grande. He owned one of those companies. He owned a newspaper company in Salt Lake City.
He was a member of the church twice.
He joined the church twice.
Under different names.
One, I'm sure, was under William Cole when he was married to the gal up in Malad. The other name I don't know, but I know it was in the area where the Black Book says that he went with the Mormons to build either a tabernacle or a temple. I'm pretty sure it was a tabernacle, and he helped build it. He more than likely joined under some name at that point, but we don't know what it is. But that's also the same general area when I found a charcoal drawing of a woman. And when I come across that charcoal drawing, it doesn't say who did it. But I recognize that it was probably this same gal's name that did Quantrill's Raiders. And when I saw the picture, I said, that's Jesse's mother. And so I contacted the guy that sold it at the auction, and he didn't remember too much about it, but I asked him, well, where are you located? And he says, I'm up in British Columbia, which was the same place where Jesse went. So maybe at one time his mother was up there. I don't know. I would love to have contacted the people who actually bought the photo, not knowing who it is, and tell them who it is.
Usually people don't leave their names for people to find them.
Maybe even offer to buy it from them. But it's amazing how many little things you come across as you're doing the research, and you know that you can't prove it. It's just got to be accepted as one of those strange coincidences.
Okay, I have some notes. I have some more notes here. I don't know how they fit in, but one is about the Sioux Indian, Margaret Wallace.
Oh, Margaret Wabasha.
Walasha.
Why he married her, I don't know.
But after he left, she married an Indian called Good Teacher.
I don't think he was an Indian, but I do think she remarried after Jesse disappeared because her name in the genealogical record became Good Teacher. She may have had it prior, but I think it came after.
Okay.
And I don't know exactly what the story is on that,
but from her, we get Joe Jesse.
Having been married to her, they had a son, and his name was Joe Jesse, so I can only assume that he was using one of the aliases. I think there's two, wherein the last name of Jesse was used. So it was one of the two. And Joe Jesse was the father of Lee Hawk. Lee Hawk is the one that you hear about occasionally, who they call Jesse James III. He changed his name.
From Lee Hawk to Jesse James III?
Yeah.
Okay, now this is a big controversy story.
Custer's last stand. Okay.
Custer was going up against, was it the Cheyenne?
No, the Sioux.
I
Jesse had spies scattered out, okay? Some of them that were riding with Custer. My take on it is that somehow Jesse knew that Custer and his men were going after these Sioux Indians who weren't bothering anybody. They were just migrating. They were trying to survive,
do what they
trying to
normally
live.
do. Yeah.
And here, Mr. Custer, he's going to go and wage war on them and make it look like they instigated the war.
And he becomes a hero.
They knew it was coming. According to the Black Book, Jesse prepared the Sioux Indians, whom Jesse had a real soft spot for the Sioux Indians. Two of his best operatives were Sioux Indians. Okay, they understood the language, they understood the writing system, which was very much like Indian writing, but they knew it was coming. And so the Confederacy helped the Sioux Indians and helped prepare them for that moment when Custer and his men came upon them. And they were supposedly a big part of that massacre.
Which helped?
They supposedly supplied them with guns, Gatling guns, etc., and had them well prepared before Custer ever got there.
There's a story about the Gatling guns. They were mounted on mules, right?
According to the Black Book.
Okay, this is just speculation.
I was hoping you wouldn't ask this one.
I know, because
it's crazy.
It sounds crazy and far-fetched.
It's not impossible, but it's crazy. According to the Black Book, it says Jesse found a way to attach Gatling guns to the back of mules. Now, that might sound crazy, but you got to understand it's not that difficult to fashion a crosswood, like a saddle setup and make a pivot point where you can put a Gatling gun. Of course, the rider has got to be on a different horse. It's not going to happen. And you're not going to shoot right down its head
between the ears,
right between his ears. You got to have a little bit of imagination here.
So the mule would be this way. The Gatling gun would be shooting perpendicular across the back. He would have to either be on the ground on a stool or on another horse to operate the gun.
But when I read this, I thought, aha, I finally found something that I might not be able to disprove it, but this is ludicrous. I don't know how this
to me happened. It sounds crazy.
So I decided to do a little bit of photo searching to see if this concept exists at all. And much to my surprise, there's many incidences where they have actually put Gatling guns on the back of a horse to operate.
This would be one of the
probably
like that you have in.
Well, they didn't have a remote control, that's for sure.
Oh, come on! It wasn't like an A10 where it just fires it.
But I couldn't believe what I was seeing, photo after photo. Just go to Google and type in Gatling gun.
So what you're saying is it's plausible that
it's more than plausible.
I mean, no, the plausible that Jesse even got that all together.
Well, who knows? He might have been the one that originally came up with the idea. I don't know, because the pictures I saw, one of them was being done by Germans, and they actually had Gatling guns on the back of a mule or a horse, I can't remember. But there was others as well about that same time frame.
Okay, so tell me what the Black Book says about that whole situation. Were they chasing Indians and they come across and the Gatling guns mowed them all down, or?
I don't know. I don't know. I wasn't there.
Custer had no chance.
All I know is there's something more that took place at that battle. And it wasn't a battle, it was a slaughter, and I don't mean for the Indians.
Right.
Custer and his men got mowed down like...
Well, I imagine because it just wasn't the Indians fighting Custer, it was actually other soldiers fighting.
Well, there were some soldiers that were riding with Custer who were actually Confederates. And their way to get out of this was, at that moment when they were going to start to flee, they were supposed to pull out a white and gold flag and wave it.
As they're heading
and if
towards
they
the
did
Sioux,
that,
right?
the Indians would let them go right past them.
Okay.
Okay, I actually verified one of the names that was mentioned in the Black Book, who was present and who was Confederate. He gave his name, and I went and looked him up on the North rolls of the soldiers, and I found him. You know, it wasn't exactly an uncommon name, but
So the soldiers that wanted to be spared had these flags made. They went towards the Sioux.
Yeah, they rode right through the Indians.
Sioux, and the Indians allowed them to come through, which means that there were other. Well, if they had Gatling guns, there had to be other soldiers running those Gatling guns.
Right, Indians.
Oh, there were Indians running those.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they supplied all this stuff to the Sioux and let the Sioux take care of it.
Right.
Okay.
When the chaos was all done, I don't know exactly how it's worded in the book, but it said that they had to gather everything up and get it out of there, so that there was no evidence that the Confederacy had helped them.
So they had to police all their brass.
Huh?
Police the brass.
Oh, you
Picking up all
definitely
that
have
stuff.
to pick up some brass.
There'd be a lot of it.
You know, talking to a friend of mine, he said the brass would have been very similar to what they were using in their guns. And he says, as far as we know, there's been no evidence of an overabundance of brass found. Well, how long does it take you to pick up brass?
Well, if I was running a Gatling gun for about 30 minutes.
Might be quite a bit of brass.
Right. I mean, it's been in Wilson.
You know, and that argument could go both ways. It could be, well, there was a lack of brass, so there couldn't have been Gatling guns. And
well, if the Sioux were outfitted with U.S. Army rifles, I mean, there's going to be a lot of brass.
Well, according to the book, all that stuff was gathered up. It doesn't mention brass, but it said they, gathered up all the guns, the Gatling guns, etc., and they put them on wagons and took them to a nearby known dry cave that they have used in the past. And they don't say that that's where it was permanently encrusted.
But it was temporarily put there because there was an army on its way.
Exactly. They had to get the hell out of there.
Custer sent for this other army to come, right?
What's that?
Did Custer send or put a request in for this other army?
I can't remember what his name is, but there was another guy over his troops. I know at least one person that can spit the names out like they're nothing, but
not me.
There was two other regiments, if you will, that were on their way to that area. So they knew they had to get out of there and quickly. So did they gather up the brass? Who knows? Or did they send in a bunch of archaeologists who knew damn well that they had to keep the narrative, and they're the ones that gathered up any leftover brass that was too much to explain. You could say it's all bullshit, none of it ever happened, and the only brass that was found was from
Custer.
The guns that they did have. You know, it's one of those things that you may never find an answer for.
No, but it's very, very interesting. You know?
It is. I mean, can you picture a Gatling gun on the back of a horse and an Indian over there?
And again, to the point of the book, why would a writer, an author, even say something like that? And it's so out there.
Exactly. And I'm thinking that the whole book. I'm thinking, this he's got to be smoking something good, or
bad,
or he's got one hell of an imagination, or what he's writing is true,
and
at least he believes it's true.
And where did you get that information from?
Exactly. Where would you come up with that kind of stuff? It sounds so incredible. There's the story of Maximilian.
Okay,
it's an incredible
that's my next
story.
one right there.
And the story of...
let's start with Maximilian.
We will.
Okay.
And then there's the story of Kaiser Wilhelm.
Yes, both of those.
Which one do you want to talk about first?
Let's start with Maximilian. He was French.
All right,
right?
Maximilian. Yeah, and I don't know all the inner details about Maximilian and what was going on politically and so forth. All I know is that he was French, I think, and he was considered the emperor of Mexico at the time.
Mexico?
I think they were going back and forth with Spain and France. Okay. Right. All I know is they wanted him out of there. Okay. He was eventually arrested and shot at a firing squad.
Maximilian.
Yeah. Now keep in mind, he's like a prince. Okay. And his wife was out there with him at one time. Her name was Carlotta. She was currently, as I recall, in France when he was killed, or supposedly killed. And lo and behold, the Black Book says that he did not die. Yes, he was shot, and he was critically injured. And according to the story, his men walked in, saw him laying on the ground, and saw that he was still alive. They could see him moving. And so they went to the guys that orchestrated the firing squad and said, can we
take our body,
gather up the body of our friend and take him and bury him properly, yeah. And they said, yeah, sure, go ahead. He's dead now.
Good Christians that they are.
Well, they get him out and away from them, and they verify again that, yes, he's still alive. Well, the journey from where they were all the way to Texas, I don't know how the hell he survived, according to the Black Book. But according to the book, he survived. No sooner than they got to wherever they were in Texas, a dispatch was sent out to get a doctor as soon as possible. And from what I understand, I think they were already in Texas.
Dispatched to Jesse James?
Jesse James. Anyway, apparently Dr. Sylvester Franklin James, Jesse's brother, showed up and nursed this guy back to health. And they said he retained a limp for the rest of his life because of it. He had to walk like sideways a little bit. But he was so grateful, according to the book, he was so grateful to Jesse for this that he was willing to give him his personal treasure and one other treasure in addition to it. He says, all I want you to do is go to France and bring back my Carlotta. Mm-hmm. And so, according to the book, Jesse arranged to go and find a double to take her place. They gathered her up and brought her back to the States, and Carlotta and Maximilian lived out the remainder of their life in obscurity. I don't know what name they went under, but they apparently lived in New Mexico somewhere and lived out the rest of their days. Now, that's a pretty incredible story as far as I'm concerned. Now, to me, what gave it a little more credibility, even though I had a tendency to buy into it, if you will, cautiously, because it is an incredible story.
Well, you have to when you read it, if you don't buy into it, you're not going to buy it at all. You'd have to say, okay, let me test a little bit about it.
Well, you've heard of Doc Noss, Victoria Peak treasure?
No, sorry.
Okay, well, there's some people out there, I've heard of it. Well, I don't know exactly what year Doc Noss actually let the list of things that he found in the treasure that he found at Victoria Peaks. He made a list of things that he saw in the cave, took pictures of some of it. Two pictures I was particularly interested in. One was these Wells Fargo chests. And keep in mind, there's stacks of gold bars, there's all kinds of stuff in there. I think what he found was a KGC depository. I don't know exactly what year Doc Noss let loose of this information. He took notes of what he found in that cave, made a list, and took pictures of some things, and kept it to himself from what I understand, and at a certain time down the road he let go of this information. Okay. As I recall, Terry Carter may have that information. In fact, I think I got it from him once, and I don't know what I did with it, but anyway. In the book, it talks about these Wells Fargo trunks that was part of Maximilian's treasure. They also mention another box. I think it was a Wells Fargo box, and it had written on it Carlotta's Things. No. Doc Noss had that written, had a picture of a crown, and these boxes, and one of the boxes I think says Carlotta's Things. Carlotta's Things was not mentioned in the Black Book, just the name Carlotta.
Right.
Okay, and nothing about a crown. Well, that book was written roughly 1975, right?
Okay.
Well, when did Doc Noss release that information to the public? And I'm not sure it really matters. What if he didn't release it until I don't know when Doc Noss died, but somebody released that information. Let's say it came out in the 90s. Okay, so it's 15 years after. Why would anyone do that? I'm saying, why would Dale Schrader take information from this story, and who's the mastermind behind all of this? It's the same thing we keep coming to. Who the hell is going to think of this? But here you got Jesse James talking about taking Maximilian's treasure. Okay. He mentions Wells Fargo boxes, okay, nothing more. There was also an Aztec treasure that he knew about, that some Aztec friends of him told him about. They went and got that also. And I think what Victoria Peak is it's the place where they took this stuff and cached it.
Right.
It's a KGC depository.
And Doc Noss happened to find it.
He wasn't supposed to find it, but he did. And Johnny Government went in there and scarfed it all up. And you can see why they did, because they had so damn much stolen from them, but not thinking and not understanding that they stole it from us.
Us?
1862, war between the states.
Oh.
They took it from us. This is our country. This is not federal territory. This is a free republic. It belongs to we the people, not Johnny the corporation.
So Carlita, they must have, I wish we would know what happened to that. It'd be nice to know what happened to all our stuff.
Well, yeah, it would be. I mean, I've got a picture of the crown, I got a picture of the Wells Fargo boxes, and I can't remember whether it's written on the, I think it's on the box. It says
actually,
Carlotta's Things. And I thought, this validates the story about Maximilian. And then you have the story about Kaiser Wilhelm. Well, in the Black Book, they talk about Kaiser Wilhelm coming here, and him and Jesse were working together, and there was talk about the Emperor of Germany helping the Confederacy for their cause. And
this is the guy that had the luxury buggy, right? The
Landau buggy.
The Landau buggy, yeah.
Yeah, a certain Landau, very expensive Landau buggy, but Kaiser Wilhelm was trying to help the Confederacy against the very problem that was going to come against Germany several years later in 1942, when the world bankers orchestrated controversy in Germany, all for the purpose of overthrowing their fiat system. So you got all these reports of Kaiser Wilhelm being here. And because of all the controversy that was taking place in Germany at the time, and concerning having emperors and having kings and instead of a president or whatever, anyway, they threw the Kaiser out, okay? Now, the Kaiser was welcome to go and live wherever he damn well wanted. They really didn't care, but they weren't going to have an emperor anymore. Black Book says that he came here and seeking Jesse's help, and at the same time, Jesse seeking his help. He was in hiding, okay? Apparently, he eventually, we have records in the Uinta Basin of the Kaiser buying up properties. Then you have newspaper articles. Will the Kaiser be coming to live here in the basin?
Like that Camas
and
Valley,
he will be welcome as long as he is peaceable. So we know he was here.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have pictures of him on hunts, right?
Now, thanks to a very deceptive friend of mine from the past, we have some photos which he stole from a couple of brothers down in Cedar City. And these photos are of a hunting party that was more than likely, they were more than likely the hosts to the Kaiser when he came here. Because one of those photos, I guarantee you, is the Kaiser. You can see it, okay? Doesn't mean it's him, but it means when I look at it, I see the Kaiser. And I don't care what conclusion anybody has on it, because I'm not necessarily using it as an evidence. I know the Kaiser was here. We have the written documentation of it. I have the property records that shows Baron von Horst, who was his right-hand man, buying up property.
So what was the purpose of the Kaiser buying up property?
Don't know.
Okay.
I have no idea.
Okay.
But it was up around Sandwash and other areas. Now, the interesting thing to me was in the Black Book, when it reached a certain point, the Kaiser got involved in cattle, in beef, okay? And he used the name that comes from a German medal. One of the highest honors you can get was the Blue Max medal, okay? And he named his beef Blue Max beef, okay? Well, a little light went on and I thought, there's gotta be some record of that.
Yeah.
Gotta be. So I go online and I type in Blue Max beef. Now, before I tell you the results, the Black Book also says that the Kaiser, with his wife, under the name of Kumpf, was the last name. William Kumpf was the name he went by. Kumpf, Kumpf, okay? And they lived out the rest of their lives under that name. And he lived up in Aurora, Washington. Well, so I get my results for this Blue Max, and I find out that there is a
Blue Max
meat company just outside of Aurora, Washington. Not back east, not down south, not up north, nowhere else in the United States, Alaska, or anywhere else. Blue Max was just outside of Aurora, Washington. And I'm thinking, that's just too damn coincidental.
Again, the black book can't be right.
Yeah, how the hell? How did Dale Schrader, how do you come up with all this? Okay?
Who did he have?
Right.
He had to have
I'm not done.
Okay.
I wasn't going to let it sit just there, so I called Blue Max Beef. And they're still in business to this day. You go online, Google, type in Blue Max Beef. They now have 2 locations. Okay, one of them I think is Puyallup, and the other one just outside of Aurora. Anyway, so I called up and I asked for the owner of the company, and they said he's not available right now. He's currently doing something or whatever. In fact, I think he was talking about opening another store or something like that. I eventually got hold of, I laid down the questions that I wanted to ask him. And I can't remember whether I actually got hold of the owner of the company or the guy that I gave the questions to go get the answers, and then he would answer them for me. The questions that I wanted to know is, how did Blue Max Beef get its name? How long have you owned it? Is it a family-owned business? And who was the previous owner if you bought it? Well, the answers I got was that Blue Max Beef came from the former owner. And the former owner was a silver-haired, keep in mind, we're going to show a picture of this silver-haired,
it's right
pot
here.
belly.
Don't you see it?
Huh?
It's right here. Don't you see it?
It's coming. This silver-haired, this is what the guy on the phone told me. I said, how did your dad get it? And he said he bought it from an old silver-haired, pot-bellied German guy. And I about crapped.
This is too coincidental.
Dude, what I'm trying to say is, it has to be true.
Eventually, you just got to accept it. But if you take any single story out of the book, it's like, there's no way.
Well, to this day, I want to call that company back, and I want to ask the owner, consider this. You said that you don't remember the guy's name, but does the name William Kumpf even ring familiar with you? Is there any records anywhere that you can find that
like a
shows,
box of receipts back in the basement, you know?
Well, somewhere there had to be a legal
action between the purchasing of
transaction between 2 people. That means out there somewhere, if his dad, I think he said his dad, it could have been his grandfather that bought it from this old silver-haired, pot-bellied German guy. There has to be a record of whom they bought it from, right?
Right.
Do I want to run up to Aurora, Colorado and go through the
no, because you're assuming
land records up there?
That's true, because everything else you're finding out is true. So
it should be there, and I'll bet you it says William Kumpf. You can't make this stuff up.
Yeah, but it's like we were saying, someone to listen to any one of these stories all by itself, you say, no, that's wrong, because no one person would do this. And yet, out of this book, we're getting time and time again things that you can find are not disproving the book; they're actually supporting the book.
Well, here's a question I want to ask everybody and anybody who has ever had an interest in the Black Book. I wish it were possible to get a list of every individual who has read this book and who has stopped at any given point and said, you know what? I'm going to see if I can prove that. Nobody does. They read the book, they use their own genius, whether it's good or bad,
and that's their conclusion.
And they'd make a decision. Nah, this is too incredible. I don't believe it. Other people, that'll suck into anything, well, for good cause on this book, as far as I'm concerned. But nobody does that. Who else has questioned the story of Kaiser Wilhelm. Who else has questioned the story of
The Lady Milan.
Maximilian and Susan Palmer that wasn't even in the Black Book? Who has done this? But see, this is what I was asked to do: prove or disprove the book. And as a result, it's become one of my favorite projects and one of my fastest growing projects.
Because you're finding that there's nothing to disprove it so far. And now you're hoping that you find something that would be contrary, I bet.
One thing I was hoping would happen finally did. Okay?
Okay, what would that be?
I get people sending me pictures all the time, and I get the picture and they tell me this big story.
And you throw them in the trash.
Yeah,
I'm just joking.
You know, this, we know this was Jesse James. I'm sorry, but you said this picture was taken in 1920. And if it was in 1920, Jesse James would be this old, and this guy in this picture is very clearly in his 40s. Okay? This can't be Jesse James. And that's just a scenario. Okay?
Right. You're just
and I
trying
get
to put
that
logic,
all the time.
You're trying to put logic to any other.
But I had this lady contact me, and she says, I think we've got a family story or whatever that I really think you would enjoy. Would you be interested in seeing the evidence? And I said, absolutely, you know. So she sent me the written story, sent me a copy of the letter that was written back and forth. Actually, it was written one way, and a picture. Now, I didn't get the written part yet. She sent the picture first and just kind of briefly told me the story. And I looked at the picture, and I said, oh God, here we go again. And I was about ready to just hit the button and cast it aside, and I stopped and I looked, and I thought, holy crap.
Hey, he said crap.
Holy poo-poo butt. I looked at that and I about crapped. I went and got the picture of Jesse James, the one that I have decided is truly Jesse James, and I'm looking at the exact same two people. And we'll show a comparison to that with the overlays. I asked, where's this picture? I want this picture. She sent me a very good copy, okay? And I actually found out where the company was that took the photos. I found out that there is a collection of his photos up there in that particular state. And if I could ever afford it, I would like to fly back there, drive back there, I don't care, find that collection and go through them, because somewhere in there is a photo negative or another original photo.
Okay, so can you tell the story? Because everybody's going, okay, what's the story now?
No. Okay, I'm not going to tell them where it is.
Or just the background so they can say, okay.
I want that photo. Okay, I want the original photo. I'd be happy with a professionally recreated photo from a negative, okay, or even the original photo, make a very good copy of it. I'd be happy with any of them, but yeah, I want to buy that photo.
What's the photo of? I mean, is it other than Jesse? I mean,
Jesse James sitting on the left.
Okay.
Sylvester Franklin James sitting on the right. They're in chairs with their leg crossed and
yeah,
boots. And,
typical picture.
Mm-hmm. Nice picture too.
And
top left, standing behind him, is a younger photo of Brad Dalton.
Dalton?
Sundance Kid. Standing next to him, behind Frank, is Harry.
Longbottom.
No. Harvey Logan.
Harvey.
Kid Curry.
Kid Curry?
Kid Curry.
Not the.
There's no one else. I have compared those photos to everybody and anybody I could find.
Okay.
And when I pulled up Harvey Logan's picture and I looked at it, and I thought, I think I got him. And so I did one of my photo overlays. I actually carried the mustache over to this baby face kid that was in the photo. He's probably about 27 years old in the photo. but I carried over the mustache so I could compare those, and then I did one of his bare face. And I'm convinced I could be wrong.
You could be wrong. So,
I had one negative comment, and it was a one-word comment. And I hate these kind of people. I don't mind negative comments, okay? Everybody's got an opinion. They're like armpits. Everybody's got two, okay? The only thing this negative comment said was rubbish.
You said rubbish?
No, he said rubbish. What? Don't give me this rubbish crap. I mean, you're more than welcome to your opinion, but for hell's sakes, tell me why you think it's rubbish. You know, share something with us.
Can you tell us a story what the lady said to you about the background of these pictures? You said she sent you...
She thought that they were the younger gang, the two guys in the back. The front she thought was Frank and Jesse. It's actually Jesse and Frank. And behind them she thought maybe the younger brothers. And so I, of course, investigated that as close as I could. Now, later she sent me the letter that was written to her.
That's where I'm getting at.
Okay, the letter came from Lee Hawk, who was the cousin of her grandfather. And it was saying, Grandpa died last night. She's the great-great-granddaughter of Jesse James. And she knows it. Half her family wants nothing to do with it.
Why?
Oh, because they can't be related to this slave-owning, bloodthirsty chicken crap. I wanted to say.
Okay, stop right there. So they're under what you would call the academic history, thinking that way versus
the guy is a freaking hero.
Yeah, but they don't think that.
No, because they didn't win the war. So who writes the history?
People win the war.
Uh-huh.
That's a really good story, actually. I never heard that before.
It's fascinating the more you think about it and the more evidence you see. And
so, have you been in contact with this lady?
Oh, yeah.
And does she have any more pictures or anything?
She's trying to find the original. And then she'll decide whether she's going to sell it to me or have a professional copy made.
I'd probably have a professional copy made and send it to you, but...
You would?
Yeah.
But I'm hoping she'll sell me the photo.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
They've been through a lot the past couple of years, and despite all that, she's kept in touch. And if I send her an email, she'll respond. The last one was thanks for the update. I was finally able to tell her who the other two guys were.
Oh, that's awesome. Bet you enjoyed that.
But yeah, half the family doesn't want anything to do with it. But others in the family, they think it's one of the neatest damn things ever.
Well, it is.
It is. It's cool. There's a perfect DNA source right there.
There you go. Yeah, we were talking about that the other day. Who did you get it from?
Well, and she is related through Lee Hawk. So
Yeah,
Joe Jesse.
That was my next thing, the DNA. But Lee Hawk?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jesse James the Third.
Why did he change his name?
Hmm?
Why would he change his name?
Pride.
We were discussing where would you get a supposedly clean or like this is no crap, this is DNA from the Jesse James line, and so if you were to find other DNA from maybe his aliases, you'd be able to prove that that was still Jesse James type thing.
The problem is you have so many different beliefs and perspectives, etc. How do you positively prove that J. Frank Dalton, the man in the dirt, is Jesse James. What DNA can you use that'll validate that?
Well, the other night I would say I have no idea.
Well, my question is,
but this story here
is the DNA sample that they supposedly have of J. Frank Dalton, there's controversy on whether they dug up the right grave or not.
Well,
Okay, now my personal opinion is that controversy came so that they had something to fall back on.
in case it's,
And they may or may not have dug up the right grave, but they had to have that little niche to fall back on. Anything else you can think of?
no. Do you have anything else you want to add to this that you found interesting, or?
I wish I could find it in myself to start from the beginning and rewrite the book.
To make it more make sense more?
Because
like when I was reading it, it's like, what? You know, every other page is like, what?
and as far as I know, that's a professional writer. I'm not a professional writer.
No, but
I'm just a dumb old
when
high
we
school
write
dropout
stories,
from
when
Markham
we write
Park.
stories, it's like either you write it chronological, you write it something.
Exactly. How do you do it? If you wrote it chronologically,
It wouldn't make sense because you have to keep going back and say
you
this
would
guy
have to keep repeating the same events over and over and over.
It'd be like, by the way, the guy that sent him to jail
You
was
have
him.
to tell the foundation. You have to tell where it came from.
That's why when you first start the book, when you first start the book, it's like, wait a minute, everybody that he's talking to is himself. It's like, how can he be everybody? You can't. Yeah, when you tell a story, you can't be everybody.
The first thing you have to do is you have to make a decision. Did Jesse James fake his own death? Well, yeah, he did several times, but that's just an opinion. Okay?
Next.
But the one that everybody is interested in is, did he fake his death in 1882? Well, was Zerelda Cole James his mother?
And was the other one his aunt?
Was he married to
cousin?
Zerelda Mims? These are all the things you've got to get settled in your head first before you can start looking at the broad perspective of the book. So you got to cover those points first.
Which is difficult because the author just puts it out there as a matter of fact, this is what happened.
Well, that's why when I write about it or to do an article, I try to focus on one thing. You know, let me show these people why this was a hoaxed, fake death. Okay, like we did.
Right.
Okay, these are the reasons why I know that it's true, and I gave those. The one I love to show, and I don't even think we talked about it, and show you how easily things get messed up. Go look up a picture, get on your phone, get on the internet and look up Bell Star.
I feel like I'm on a podcast and I'm doing the job of all the people in the background.
Yeah, go look up Bell Star. They have Jesse James's wife, who is actually a freaking sweetheart and a true lady. And they've got her pegged as a gunslinging Louisiana whore.
Belly Star.
And that's not my rebel. That's Bell Star. Now, go ahead and look at all the images. Go up and hit images. Now, look at those two right there. Is that the same person?
No.
It doesn't even take a genius, or
No, that one has a sour face.
it doesn't even take a Chuck.
This one and these two are the same.
But the academics want you to believe they are one and the same. This is Myra Bell Shirley. This is Bell Star. We don't know what her real name is. All we know is she was a gun-slinging, murderous woman.
That's what it says here. She's the outlaw queen.
Now, how are you going to get this whole concept with Jesse James hoaxing his death? How are you going to get that through the people's heads if they can't even comprehend something that simple?
See, these three look the same.
They are the same. That's her in her older years.
That's not her there.
That's her in her older
You
years.
think so?
Mm-hmm. That's Belle Starr. That's Myra Bell. I have several other photos of Myra Bell. You see what I'm saying? If the academics can't grasp that concept right there, and yet they keep writing about it, regurgitating what previous writers have wrote. They don't take those two pictures and put them side by side and just ask the question, why don't they look alike? The reasonable answer is because they're not the same person. Something's wrong here. According to the Black Book, at one time, Myra Bell's spy name was Belle Starr. Yeah.
That's what I just looked up, Belle Starr.
Belle Starr. Okay.
Belle.
The Belle Starr that came later showed up on the scene calling herself Belle Starr. Where'd she get the name?
From the previous.
Well, my guess would be she heard this spy name, but this spy disappeared. Nobody knows about her anymore. You know what? That's a cool name. Everybody liked that, so that's what I'm going to use. I think that's where she got it from. And nobody knows who she really is. Not Myra Bell, Belle Starr. You know what name they got married under? One time only.
Jesse James?
Harrison Trow and Missouri Ann. And we have the marriage record. I'll show you the picture. We have their marriage photo. When I first found the photo, it said Jim Reed and Myra Bell. Jim Reed would have been one of the aliases.
Right, I was going to say.
But everybody else thinks Jim Reed's some other guy that she married because Jesse was being unfaithful. No, he was being a spy.
Okay, I got one more question, or maybe more, but Calamity Jane, did she fit in this at all? I thought I read something about her.
Yes and no. That's in the Black Book, but it's a story told about how it's common. Be patient. It's old. There's cobwebs. It needs to be oiled.
I just remember reading something about it, and then I was like,
the hell's his name? Hickok. Bill Hickok. It has to do with Bill Hickok and Jesse's encounters with him.
Did they like each other?
No, not in the slightest. At one point, Jesse caught him as a marshal and his deputy in a little room with a very soiled dove, quote unquote. And Bill Hickok was in his flannel pajamas, and he said, and the deputy was just playing barrel all over. And he marched him out into the street
and out of town
at gunpoint and told him to get out of town. So one of them was butt naked and the other one was wearing his red flannels, and he turned around and he says, Jesse, next time we meet, I'm going to kill you. And the next time they met was the night that Bill Hickok was shot. Well, after he killed Bill Hickok, he had to go tell Calamity Jane because that was his friend. And you almost get the feeling that her response was somewhat in a relief, but at the same time she was sad. So I think, she loved him, but at the same time she hated him. Because the main thing Jesse was worried about was, what are we going to do with, can't remember her name, something Jean, her daughter. Because that was his biggest concern, is I have to go tell the little girl that I just killed her dad. And that really bothered him. So anyway, he goes over to tell Calamity Jane about it. And what are we going to do with little Gene? And she said, well, what? Don't you think I'm capable of taking care of him? And he said, well, you know, you are in Deadwood, and it's a wild town, and blah, blah, blah. And he kind of took the blame off of her shoulders. And he explained to her that it would be better if we sent her off, you know, to go live with somebody that was more capable. And he said, and you can go visit her, you know, a couple times a year, I'll pay for it. And she said, that's probably going to be best. So he ended up sending little Jean, I can't remember her full name, to his sister, Tilly, is the one that ended up raising her. Somewhere, I think it was New Jersey. It was a cool story. If it's true, then it's actually kind of comical. But yeah, Bill Hickok was a legend in his own mind, and
he was a sheriff.
And it adopted many other people's minds because the victor always writes the history. We can't have Bill Hickok looking like a wimp.
Thank Greg for letting us do an interview here at the Moon Lake Lodge, and I'll put his information and link down in the description of the video. I don't know if it's going to be
still on.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be one big long video, or I might break it up in two shorter videos.